That's what you call.
Are we recording?
Yes.
Okay. Morning, everybody. I'll go ahead and call signing on the third quarter of the Landfill Advisory Committee order. Today is my favorite meeting of the year because I get to call for elections. Surprise, surprise, it's been a year since our last elections. Yeah, I know, I had the same thought this morning. So typically that is the first order of business on election day. Bylaws laid this out for us, pretty straightforward. And one of the provisions in there, no officer shall serve more than 2 consecutive terms. And this is the end of my second consecutive term. So with that being said, I'll open the floor for nominations for chair of the Landfill Advisory Committee.
Shaking his head, no.
I like him.
I can't take a unspoken point.
Well, she's
recording
it. She's recording it.
I have to refuse. And he has to refuse. I nominate Paul because he's.
I refuse to do it. I would nominate you though. I think you'd be great at it.
No, you can't.
What do you mean I can't?
Stand off.
It's not allowed. It's not allowed. On this side to take.
Raise your hand, Morris.
Any other nominations for the role of chair? I'm not sure who you.
I'm sorry, I haven't
We
missed
do
a
it.
train. No. Train.
Well, see, I'm not small. I'm telling you now, I'm not smart enough. I mean that.
Well, that's one of them, but I really don't want to take on responsibility. I am not going to have the time to
Well, I'm assuming.
attend to. I know you do a lot tending to this, and I do not.
I can underscore and say no.
Can I ask you something? Who adopted those?
It should have been done last meeting, I'm thinking.
Could we change that?
Anything in the bylaws can be changed, but
By us?
by this group, but it does require at least 2 meetings in order to do that. And it also does, any bylaws proposal at any meeting has to be approved at a subsequent meeting. You can't do it at the same meeting. So that's not a possibility today, and we are subject to the bylaws as they stand.
I understand. All right, but, and I ask you a question. You've done a great job. I mean, you filled me in on a lot of stuff that I didn't know. Would you do it again? If we changed, and I'm just asking, would you accept it again or not?
I don't think you're giving me much of a choice.
I think keep going with.
Although I would say there's one commissioner that has not rejected the role of chair this morning. He's looking at me right now. I think it's his birthday, so.
No, sir, no. No, really, and I want you to know, I am not, I wouldn't be good at that. As you all well know, I say what I think, and sometimes that offends. Yeah, that's okay with us. We all know that it's a thing, but the people out that I might talk to might get offended. I just, and it's too much responsibility. I can't do it. I'll also tell you all this, I have depression and anxiety. I take 3 medications for it. And that's one reason I retired from my part-time job, which was still law enforcement. It just got to get on the nerves. I couldn't deal with it.
Is the floor open to suggestions?
The floor is wide open for nominations.
Since, it seems like the consensus of the group right now is we'd love to keep things status quo. And the bylaws are not allowing us to do that. And we have a meeting or 2 that we have to work through. What is the proper protocol to make the necessary changes so we can maintain the status quo?
Well, I'll go ahead and read the section of bylaws that covers officers and elections. The officers of the committee shall be selected from the members and shall consist of the chair, vice chair, and secretary. And traditionally, the secretary has been the environmental manager. The officers shall be elected at an organizational meeting in July to serve for 1 year or until a successor shall be elected. So there is a clause, which I'm not very comfortable with, but I didn't write that. No officer shall serve more than 2 consecutive terms. And it goes on to talk about bylaws governing its procedure, not inconsistent with state laws and ordinances to make sure that they're movable. So, technically, there is a carryover clause baked in there,
Until-
but
Wiggle, wiggle.
I think that it served the committee best to not rely on that for any longer than absolutely necessary. It's irregular. If a bylaws amendment were to be proposed, any committee person would do that. We'd have to go through, we did amend the bylaws 3 years ago. So that is a process that the committee's gone through before.
Only one that served 2 terms, or all 3 served 2 terms?
Paul and I both served 2 terms, and so those of us are technically ineligible.
No, it says successively.
He says
So-
successively.
So he's not been on
I
that.
served 2 terms too, just.
So you could be put back on there, is what that's saying. You can't do 2 in a more
Right,
than 2 in a row.
these two could be.
That's what I'm saying, I'm at the end.
Yeah.
Right, but it means he could go back on, or he could go back on.
Paul, I thought you'd been twice
I
as.
have.
No, I'm
Right.
talking about vice chair, who's vice chair?
Paul,
Right.
So he's run, both of y'all ran the same cycle.
that's correct.
Yes.
Both have to come off this time.
That's correct.
Okay,
That's what I'm saying about.
all right, yeah, all right, now I understand.
Switch.
Now, like, these swing positions.
All right, but it,
fine.
but it
The
all,
elastic provision is, it says, or until a successor shall be elected, which is,
that's,
that's squishy at best.
well, it's squishy, and I'm not saying it's squishy because it's not squishy. It's in black and white. It ain't squishy. It's quoted right there. It can be done.
I agree with that, but either the term rights or not, so.
Well, maybe so.
Neither one of us wrote this, and so I would say.
I agree with it. It's just like every law and ordinance is in the world. It contradicts itself. I mean,
Well, I'll move forward with the following, if the committee is open to this, we'll just follow the rules of order as I understand them. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Hearing no other nominations, the elections are hereby deferred until at a subsequent date, a nomination received by the current chair and will be put on the committee for vote for both the offices of chair and vice chair.
I second it.
Hearing a second, all in favor, signify by raising your hand. All opposed, like sign. So that's what we'll do.
It's not prepared.
Geez, thanks, guys.
Well, like I told you,
So historically, we probably should, but historically, the role of the secretary has been the seated environmental.
So if we don't vote it in, it
So-
kind of stays permanent.
That is my understanding.
That's who.
Yeah, that is my understanding. So,
look,
I'm the secretary.
that's what I
I'm
thought.
oh, then that's correct. Okay.
I'm taking copious notes over you too, so.
Okay.
Questions you have.
All right. Well,
Do people take a minute?
yeah, we probably need a second for that. So we'll go ahead and reopen the nominations for secretary. Are there any other nominations for secretary? Hearing no other, I'll close the nominations. All in favor of Paul, Don Garrett remaining as secretary, raise your hands. All opposed, like sign. Congratulations. Successful re-elected officer. Is this, and so this will be your second term technically, is that correct?
I thought we were both put on the same time. He
Yeah,
came on the same
I
time.
should have asked that question before calling the question.
Yes, I think we were put on the
So
exact same.
I think the most appropriate thing to do is to defer the full slate of electoral until we have either,
All right.
either an amendment to the bylaws or somebody ponies up and decides to take.
I make a motion that we do defer the entire
Okay, all right.
officers until we can sit down and do it like it's supposed to be done.
So my apologies for muddying those waters on that front. So we have a deferred election.
So I do believe me, you and Don came on at the same time, and them two came on at the same
Yeah,
time.
I
It's,
knew-
it's,
I knew
it's,
that.
it's a 3-2 switch, I think.
Yeah.
I think that's how they have it set
Yeah,
up.
we came
I think.
we came on the same time.
Okay. Well, is everybody clear on that front?
But could I ask something about that situation? And I'm not saying, could we, how does it work? Just one of us has to volunteer not to be on it, but to put anybody else on it. Is that what the deal, put it on the committee? I mean, you
As an
don't,
officer?
no, as a regular representative for the district.
I'm not clear of the question.
It's appointed
Yeah, I mean,
You're appointed, but that's what I'm saying. We're not, only way we would come off is if we required, I'm just talking to whoever appointed us, the county. Okay, that's what because that's what I'm trying to make sure. I wish we all were staggered different years is what.
Right, and our staggered since it,
Yeah, I got
two
you.
and four, but, I know all committee people serve at will.
Right, I got you.
And
That's what I
if somebody
understood.
does
to
step
start
off,
with.
then there is a procedure for an appointment of a
I
successor
just trying to.
to make sure that that district is represented.
Mhm.
Did everybody get a chance to take a look at the minutes that Royce sent out? And by the way, take a moment here and officially welcome our new environmental manager, Royce Coleman. He's been with the county now for about.
Right about 2 months,
2 months?
just over, just
Okay.
just a bit over that.
All right, well, you attended the last meeting, and my failure to not welcome you then, you were not quite in the position, but
Yeah.
want to welcome you officially at this point. And, I've had a few interactions with Royce at the landfill. I think you've done a fantastic job. You're on top of things. So we appreciate your energy and look forward to a long, successful career in that position. So
Thank you.
welcome aboard. All right, speaking of Royce and things that he sent out to us by email, if you've gotten a chance to look at the minutes from the April 19th meeting, and also want to thank you for cobbling those together, given the fact that we didn't have a vocal record of the meeting. I did have a chance to go over and add some things to that, so,
You got Jessica to thank for that.
yes, correct. Any amendments or suggestions of changes from the April 19th meeting minutes? I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the April 19th.
Motion made.
Second,
All right, motion second on the table. All in favor of approving the minutes, signify by raising your hand. All opposed, like sign. Thank you very much. We're going to open the public comment session, Storm. Do we have any comments for the board?
Yes, thank you. Hey, everybody. Glad we're here. Welcome, Royce, to the team. I just, I don't know. I had questions. I would love to be added to the email list of when information is shared, if that would be possible. And the plume, I think we talked about that before, and I think I'd made the suggestion, if anybody wanted a sign, couldn't we put it with the sanitary landfill sign that's yay high across, just if we wanted to warn folks who are from out of town, because I do have concerns about the volunteers and wanting to take care of us on the fire department and otherwise. Yeah, I don't know what else I want to say right now. I just, thank you, Bubba. It smells like Maplewood out there for bringing the truck. But
I really didn't have a choice.
I know appreciate. No, I just felt right at home. That's all I'm saying. So thank you all very much. Time and serving.
Any other comments from the board? Okay, hearing none, I'll go ahead and close the public comment session. And that brings us to the April landfill updates. Red Ben.
All right, update. We go from second quarter on 2024. We did 234,656 tons versus the second quarter of 2023 was 250,523 tons. Second quarter host fees for 2024 was $724,154 versus the second quarter in 2023, which was 778,683. So slightly less, but the tonnage, I guess, shows that. Right. We received a written report for the full DEQ inspection on 3/13/24, which is a good report. As you recall, it was an all-day inspection, including hands-on inspection of the groundwater monitoring wells and the gas boundary probes as well. So they did a full inspection on 3/13. Also, we had a DEQ air inspection on 6/12 of 2024. There's no written report as of yet. We're still waiting on DEQ for that. So We are also midway through our capping project, the 15-acre final capping on the south end of sales 28, 27. They've started it, 6/19. And about, as the 5th of July, they're about halfway through. So they're still working on that. After we get done with the capping project, we're gonna start 2 new sales, sales 20 and 21. So look for around August, somewhere August, they should start that project. Done various donations this quarter. I think $500 to Russell Grove Association for the Juneteenth festival, and it's for roll off for the county fair as well. We did receive our recertification for the Wildlife Habitat Council. And we have bat boxes and some purple martin houses, and there's some grasslands there as well. So we did get the recertification for that. Sorry, excuse me. Groundwater monitoring network at the site. There's 24 sampling wells. 2 of the wells are upgrading of the landfill. The rest are downgrading aquifer. This was, I think I might go into this later when you get into the well testing. But for sampling.
Are those a technical question on that? What's the depth of those wells? There's
Don't know, actually. It doesn't matter.
Don't know the exact depth, but there's several different points in the well at which they can take water samples.
Yeah.
So they're doing column samples of it.
If I remember correctly, it's like they have several different points they can go down that well and take a sample. I can pull up the groundwater reports to show it.
They do. I mean, I was told that, I didn't have nothing to do with it, that I think before Brian came, that they don't just take a sample at the top of the well. They let it down, and get 2 or 3 samples out of each well is what I was told, but that was right there years ago.
They sample at the uppermost
I think so.
aquifer. in the
Yeah.
well. That's pretty much all I have.
Have any questions for Ben?
Hazmat.
One second, we'll get to that. All right, so that brings us to, appreciate the update. Brings us to, old business here. I'd ask Royce to go over some of the process. So at the second quarterly meeting, if you remember, we voted to kind of begin the conversation, the iterative process of discussing. Now, this is once every decade. That's the interval in which these conversations have occurred to discuss the management of the solid waste agreement. So if you'd like to update us on that, very subject.
Yeah, so the last time the solid waste agreement was formerly the CUP, last time it was updated was 2013, 2014. That was when the CUP was fully replaced by the solid waste agreement. To modify that, the discussion last time was on a change in the host tipping fees. If the county wanted to modify that, it would begin by informally asking Waste Management if they were open to a modification of the solid waste agreement. If Waste Management's open to that, because it's a bilateral agreement, if Waste Management's not open to that, there's nothing the county can do. If Waste Management was open to a modification of the SWA, it's not real clear where it actually goes from there, but I believe one of the first steps would be a full review of it by both the county and Waste Management independently. Both parties would come up with proposed changes, and then the meetings would take place where we would start to try to come to an agreement between it, and then the Board of Supervisors would have to approve anything that the LAC determines they want changed, added, or amended.
So that, I think that concisely lays out the process by which any changes would be made. And of course, I emphasize that those would be ultimately, if anything happens, those would be bilateral. So, so I appreciate that. So that is the process. Even if it went as quickly as it could go, it would take some time because it has to matriculate through all of these different.
Yes.
So,
I believe the last change was with a replacement, and that began in 2010 and was approved early 2014, late 2013.
So the 2010, that is the new agreement as opposed to the original agreement of 1990.
Yes, so the CUP was what they started with. That came around in 1990. There were small additions or changes or time limited modifications to it. Typically, that one of them was the ash agreement. But then in 2010 is when the LAC and Waste Management began the changing and updating of language to the CUP and replacing it with the SWA. And that's what we go off right now is the one that was approved in 2013, 2014. And so that's the current one. That was the last time the SWA was amended or updated.
And because I look back at the original agreement and because there were times that we did change the original agreement.
Yes.
There
On
were
several occasions.
on several occasions.
Yes, it can be changed. It just has to be bilateral and then it has to originate here, get approved by both parties and then go to the board.
So this is really a stimulus concept, a stimulating conversation. Right. That's, but that's the concept is to begin the conversation here, not to necessarily direct it. And I think it's an appropriate time at which to do this. Because of the interim of time that's passed, I expressed that in last meeting, and also there's other things that have changed and everything from the regulatory front to the business front that are worth discussing. There.
And if the LAC proposes a motion to ask Waste Management if they'd be open to reviewing it, and Waste Management's not, then nothing happens. If Waste Management is, then both parties review the SWA, propose changes. If neither party can agree, then nothing changes, but we've had a review of the document in its entirety by the SWA and Waste Management. Or by the LAC and Waste Management.
Questions on the issue, Bob?
At our last meeting, didn't we vote to raise the floor limit? Didn't we vote?
Vote was a recommendation
Okay.
that concept be adopted in this process.
So,
As kind of the trigger for why to begin the.
So are we waiting for
just
Waste-
these review?
so are we waiting for Waste Management to say they will or won't
If you
talk about
pass,
this, or we have to do another step we have to do?
Have you heard the question?
if you pass a motion,
Yeah.
asking or like wanting to move forward
Yes, sir.
to ask Waste Management,
Mhm.
then what I'll do is contact Brian and ask Brian if Waste Management has any
Okay.
interest in this.
Yeah. So that's the trigger for the process.
Right.
And it's something to begin.
Because until there's a motion passed to informally ask and approach Waste Management, if they have interest, nothing can be done. Once that motion's passed, Waste Management can be asked and then the process.
I thought we did that last meeting, that's why I'm
See,
confused.
We did, and that's a good clarification point. We did this at the last meeting, we always said not, we continue to see that.
Okay, I'm with you.
And so as he matriculated onto it, correct me if I'm speaking wrong, but you have a lot to onboard through onboarding and all that and getting seated in the position, just learning all of that.
Yeah, the last meeting took place a month and a couple of weeks before I actually took office.
Yes,
So we
yes,
didn't effectively have anybody at that point.
okay.
And I mean, at Porter, it really takes, I think, 2 years to kind of get to know a new job. So the fact that you've gotten up to speed on this front is I appreciate that. So.
Well, didn't the last meeting, didn't we already receive a little increase on like the tipping fees? And didn't we discuss that?
We did.
Yes, we did.
And so
And
that,
I'm not trying to, I was thinking that's what,
yeah, in fact, that is what stimulated the discussion last time. And that was on February 6th. The host did not change, or the host did not change, but there's a provision which is section 8.4.2 that triggers a stepped increase. If, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Ben, but when Waste Management raises their tipping rates, which is not a set of books that we see, when they do, the host fee is brought up with it by a percentage. I think it's 80% or something like that. And then, of course, it can go back down. So that raises the host fee off of the base rate in accordance with any increase that you let. Now, if it comes back down, if their tipping fee gets back down, it will come back down, but will not go below.
the original.
Right, so that's,
Okay.
I think of that as really a floor, not a holding point for the base fee.
So got some documents I printed out on them. If you look at them on the left side, that is the base tipping fee in the solid waste agreement. So no matter how low waste management fees go, their personal ones, the county fees will stay at those rates. That is the base.
Right.
The ones that are currently in place in 2024 are the ones on the right side, and the blue numbers are the increase. Now, in 2023, we were at the base fee. The increase was 2024. So,
And
yes.
Yeah.
in February this year.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
And
like,
it took, to reiterate what a couple of the folks had said last meeting, it took 30 years for us to get there. But we did get there. So that's a good thing.
and like you said in the SWA, the amendment is, or the addition is that no matter what waste management fees do, when it was written, they were aligned up with the base tipping fee. If waste management fees decrease, they'll never go beyond the fees on the left. Any increase waste management does, the county's fees go up 80% of the increase that waste management approved.
There is, if anybody has any sort of questions about how exactly that process works, there is one set of numbers that we don't see, but they're not our numbers to see, and that's what waste management charges. So, we rely on the full faith of the relationship that they will alert us when those fees go up and then the base fee get adjusted. Thank you, Royce.
Thank you, Ross.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll go ahead and close old business and open new business. If you want to comment on the well testing, well ban, Ross. I had, and by the way, I had asked Royce to prepare something for us on this. There was discussion of well testing last time. There is a provision which you'll cover. Yeah, so my question, this is an honest, learning questions, seeking for information is, as the footprint of the landfill changes, I don't expect for it to contract, but as it expanded as it has in the past, I just want to make sure that the new neighbors, the landfill at that point, are aware of provisions for water safety that are baked into all these agreements that we've signed on to. So it was really to make sure the public awareness of those things. So if you want to proceed with.
Yes, I'll go over the agreement. So in the solid waste agreement, it says that any existing landowner within 3,000 feet of the proposed disposal site must be offered at waste management's expense a deep well if that landowner is currently using a shallow well of less than 100 feet in depth. So the wording of it, this would be a question for a lawyer, is disposal site. Now, does the disposal site mean the property line of waste management, or does it mean the place where the actual refuse is disposed of? My opinion is that it's the actual area where the refuse is disposed of on the property. So that would mean the actual active and closed cells would be where you would measure that 3,000 feet from, that property line. Because the property line could be completely uninvolved, or it could be, you would be measuring from their wetland mitigation area. But at the end of the day, that'd be a question for a lawyer to determine what that word means.
And I have a question.
I can say, because of being there, the original agreement was, that's what was mentioned to my parents, that it would be from wherever the trash, that basically with my dad and mom, they said wherever the trash stops, it wouldn't be from the, see, like with me, I mean, I live, my land joins theirs, well, somebody 3,000 feet from there behind me would be entitled to a well.
Right.
It was just from
And
at that time, but see, that's moved. What I'm saying, that has changed. In other words, the size of the footprint has changed, and I don't know what, and I would think that would have to change with it.
My understanding, and tell me if I'm wrong, Ben and Royce, is that DEQ permits where cells can be built. Is that correct?
Yes.
So that has nothing, that's irrespective of the property line. That's just where trash can be placed in accordance to the regulations. So my understanding is that 3,000 feet would emanate from the polygon of any of those, from the boundary of that disposal area, and not from the property boundary. Is that?
That's what it was explained to, yes.
So I think it's good for all of us to get on the same page on that front and have this matter public. So anybody that's a new landowner understands it's not necessarily the fact that you now have waste management as a neighbor. But it's your distance from permitted DEQ. And as that changes, so shall the
Well-
3,000 foot expand.
That's what I was kind of asking there at the end. It's nowhere in there that says anything, because I read that part, because I've had a person question if they could get another well. And I guess you'd have to get a lawyer to look at it. Does it continue as it moves, the footprint, or was it just for the original?
Oh, no.
I would interpret disposal site as being.
And that's the way I interpret.
That's a living document.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Otherwise, it would have been basically
Right.
platted out to say this is the boundary. That's a fix, but it's not a fixed boundary except by DEQ. And of course, waste management. So.
Okay.
Well, in my opinion, the first thing, and my understanding of it, the first thing you need to do would be for a lawyer to tell you, because it says any existing landowners. So does that only apply to people who own that property
At that time.
at that time when the agreement was signed? And then after that, you would have to look into 3,000 feet of the disposal site. If they say it's the area where the trash is being stored, then you would start looking into the distance from that.
They could have 1,000 acre buffer zone. Yeah, they have to get to, so there's no need to do the whole.
Yeah, that could be negated by just expanding them,
And
buying everything within 3,000 feet of disposal.
as the mountain moves, pushes the line further out.
And this is also for anybody that does have a shallow well, which are less and less common. People are
Yeah.
more often opting for those deep bore wells to begin
Yeah,
with.
but there is a lot of shallow wells on all Parkinson's Road. I mean, there's a few new houses, but there's a lot of, and the person that asked me lives on one person road.
Well, the reason I brought this up today and asked for it to put on the agenda is because we had questions in the public comment session last time about well testing and the concept of wells adjacent to neighbors. I thought it was appropriate to address that, cover what is legally agreed to between both parties here. So I think we made some good clarification on that front this morning.
What would be the protocol for the person I'm talking about to apply for a new well? Who would they go to, the county or if they were entitled? In other words, if the lawyer says, and I'm just saying that it moves right on, it wasn't just for the existing property owner and they've owned the property, all their family land, what would be the protocol? Anybody know?
My understanding is that we would go through.
Go through you, okay,
Yes.
okay.
If they were entitled to a well based on a document, and since they're a citizen,
And-
they would come to this
To you.
office and then we would
Okay.
carry it through.
Yeah.
And the study would be paid for and done by county taxpayers or by?
It's a good question. It doesn't provide for that in the document.
It wouldn't have to be much of a study. A GPS could tell you exactly how close they are to.
Right, but now, in other words, I'm John Q. Public and I said I want a new well. I just can't.
Well, you'd have to document that your existing shallow bore.
I don't know none of this stuff. I'm John Q. Public and I come to you and I walk in the door and I say, look, I want a new well. Okay. You
But I
got
think that would probably be the responsibility of my position would be if somebody is bordering the landfill and believes they are within that 3,000 feet, they say, hey, am I entitled to this? And then I would say, okay, let's look at what you got.
And I want to
could
push the envelope.
Well,
Push it
that's,
to-
I don't, if you don't mind me, that there is no envelope to push here, because
what?
there is no envelope to push. Because the DEQ boundary, and tell me if I'm wrong, Ben, the DEQ boundary for your permitted trash disposal areas that's a polygon, a dotted line that you manage, just like you would an easement within a parcel boundary, right? So it's like you got a power line to get out of your property. There's a dotted line that shows where that easement is. This is like an easement. And in any GIS server, you could do a 3,000 foot buffer on that, which would shade anything within 3,000 feet, or whatever distance you specify. And if the existing property owner fell within that shaded area, then that would begin the conversation of whether or not one is justified.
And so,
But I don't think it's in a matter of interpretation as to whether.
so in my bilateral agreement with the county and these folks right here, if all of a sudden my shallow well I feel is tainted. And it's been tainted. I'm gonna sue somebody. So am I suing the county or am I suing them or am I naming both? And then see how it flushes out.
That'd be up to your lawyer probably.
Right, and what we're all talking about
Yeah.
here is just, and this is what I'm going with. What we're dealing with here is we're lay people. And these are contracts made by lawyers for us. Okay? And we've got one on staff that we'll probably go to get his opinion, right? Okay, so in a bilateral agreement, that means anyone can come at any time, just like we've done. That's why I was sitting here going, are we entertaining a motion for the recommendation that we did last time about putting a basement fee? And I'm jumping over to that now. Sometimes I don't know whether I know we're a recommending body. You know, I'm just asking, yes.
Can I add something? It is important though. We do have 21 groundwater testing wells on site. 2 of those are upgraded of most upper aquifer. So they really, water doesn't flow uphill, but they test them. The other 19 are downgraded. So they're required by DEQ, they test them quarterly. So anybody's well would feed off of that aquifer. So by that being,
I'm asking out of ignorance, because I'm John Q. Public and I don't know.
Well, you can sue whoever you want
Right.
at any time for any reason.
Right.
So, I mean, if you're a disgruntled citizen, yeah, you sue anybody you want, but this lawsuit's not gonna hold up because there's nothing in the contract that requires you have a liability. Now, if for some reason, in some outlandish area, you do have a suit, that's a lawyer question. That wouldn't have anything to do with us.
Right, and so many of our questions are just that.
Yes.
Well, and to be clear, my raising of this issue is not to stimulate a motion of any sort.
Right.
Although any committee person can make a motion at any time, but it was for public information because we had inquiry as to the nature of well testing.
Right.
Well location, well adjacency to the landfill, and I think we have provided some clarity and also found out that there's some words that are a little less clear. But we certainly can't tidy those up here if that's certainly not in our purview.
Thank
Thank you.
Just out of curiosity, wells y'all test, are they closer to where the trash is
Yeah,
now,
they're
or are
right
they
around-
closer to the border?
they're, I'd say
Is that
they're in
what I'm
between,
asking?
and they're done by a third party
Okay.
as well. It's not by W.
And that's what requires.
Yes.
There's property line border wells. They have wells going along the property line, and then it's more of like a grid because you can see it on some of
Okay.
the facility maps. It's along the property line, and then there's a grid coming up through and up to next to the disposal site.
All right. I'm just curious how close they were to the people that live on the outside of the fence. I just didn't know.
And regardless of whether you agree or disagree with DEQ regulations and their stringency or lack thereof within waste management within Virginia and disposal of waste, the concept to protect public health is to create a barrier, a sentry barrier around a potential point source that is both above and below ground. And again, it's argumentative, or it can be argued how well that works or not, but that's the concept, and that's the basic premise. And the clauses in here regarding adjacent wells, if somebody has a shallow well, as we pointed out, and no one's really doing those anymore too, would be to get rid of that proactively so that there's not a public health hazard.
Question. The wells that are tested, were they put on waste management property for the intention of testing the quality of what groundwater is? That's all their sole purpose is
That's
for
all
these
they're-
wells, and they were done by waste management. And when they constructed the landfill. Right. And how close are they to any residents or landowner, do you know?
I don't know the exact distance, but
All
they're pretty much, they go around the perimeter.
How many are there?
21.
I mean,
2 are upgraded.
right, understood that. And I'm sure you said the numbers, I just did not,
I'm
I
sorry.
didn't listen.
Well, and also upgrading is kind of on the surface, it might be upgrading for groundwork and flow in a different direction based on geology. So hence why you encapsulate this thing.
Well, they'd be upgrading based on the groundwater because there was a groundwater study done to find the direction of flow.
Incorrect.
Go ahead.
It's an education process for me, just because, as I've said, I've become much more sensitive to well water. I live in Chula. Okay? I've become much more sensitive to this guy and that lady that's sitting over there because they're right next to it. And my next obligation, I feel, is to the taxpayers. Get as much money as we can, but then I have to put that in perspective and realize that we got a $20 million budget and this takes in 2.5. Okay, so this is not the cash cow that I kind of thought it was when I came here. Okay, it puts it at where I'm going. And I think we've got a mutually beneficial working relationship with these folks that we've had all these years, and we want to maintain that. You know, but like I said, I share that just because it's an education process for me. And if I'm sitting in this seat, that's how I'm kind of processing things is what's in the best interest of the people that are right next to the thing? Because I ride through Jetersville, and I smell it.
Well, and to your question for the John public, you know, the word tainted water would have to be a determination of some sort of non-potable, toxic or contaminant source. That would have to be demonstrably sourced from the landfill. And while there are ways of doing that, I mean, the most recent well testing, if you don't remember, there was I think it's nickel that was out of bounds, which was determined by a third party, and DEQ concurred that was actually a natural cause. That was minerals in the bedrock that existed in the water. That caused that spike. So if somebody adjacent determined or thought that there was something going on with their water, I would highly encourage them to get tested for their own health and safety. But also knowing that groundwater is not a homogeneous thing, and it does change from time to time. And often that is a natural flow.
And my apologies for being tainted. I did insurance for 40 years. I've seen plain verses. And then you name 5 of them out here and you look for the pockets you can get into. But every one of these people has to show up with what? Their lawyer. Who's paying for it? Your lawyer's paying for your stuff and our lawyer's paying for our stuff and John Q. Public's lawyer's paying for his stuff. Well, and again, I'm just saying, I'm painted in that thing, so my apologies for being painted.
Well, it brings up a good point, because again, another reason for at least every decade of looking at these documents is recognizing that there may be weaknesses inherent in them that are worth changing for the protection of public health, for all of the signatory parties, and for the sake of clarity. You know, recognizing that typos can be, or weak words can be adopted over and over again until somebody actually identifies that there's a problem with it. So that's why I believe that this process is, you're never really done with it, so to speak. It's a living document.
I've got a friend right now that's in another county that has probably 20 some properties. And he didn't disclose 2 of them in his service to the community. You know what he's facing now? Prison time. Because of the 22 properties he owned, he ended up disclosing 19 and forgot about 3. Not malicious. Make a mistake. I don't want us to make mistakes, and that's why I think at the end of the day, you hang everything on the lawyer.
All right, well,
I'm
That's
done.
a curiosity question. We're talking about.
No,
Any idea how many votes?
we can't.
For the meeting? Or any?
No, actually.
Have you done any?
There have been some, that'll be back in the records that I have when the landfill was first opened. The majority of those will have been dug right when it first opened.
Yeah.
I just don't know if any of it been dug since they get deeper. Was curious.
But the footprint in landfill hasn't changed. I mean, that, I'm sure they allow for that when.
At the beginning, gotcha.
For the purpose of this question, I have permission to hunt the landfill. I've always had it. They used to let people hunt, but anyway, because of me being in law enforcement, Brian let employees and law enforcement people hunt. I have been on every foot of that landfill from the time I was that tall. I have not seen any new test wells put in that place since the original. And I'm not saying they need them now, but there's no new ones there that I know of at all. So I guess like he said, and it's a bunch, I know about where one of them is.
To Benji's question, I think it'd be helpful, would you mind preparing a one sheet for the committee and emailing that out? That's the history of well, what you
Yeah.
have, you can consolidate that into a.
Yeah. There's a good amount of documents on the wells when the landfill first opened, so I'll consolidate that and send y'all a little brief on it.
Yeah, that would be helpful. Thank you. Any other? Is there any other new business?
There was the solar panels in the landfill. I'm not sure if you saw that in the monitors or not.
I did.
Yeah.
The document that got sent to the county and the monitor as well, by the Friends of the Meharon River. If you got a chance to look at the document, it alleged that there are solar panels being disposed of in the landfill. There are. They took a one-time load, 110 tons. The solar panels were a thin film variety. They have cadmium in them, which in and of itself, at a certain concentration, will be considered hazardous waste. These solar panels, after going through a leaching profile test, as required by the DEQ, did not meet the requirement to be hazardous waste, so they could be disposed of in the landfill. But Friends of the Meharon River have been sending us a lot of stuff, and this started months ago when they were sending us stuff, and it's going to probably continue to come up. The organization is not happy with what's happening in their county, so they're going to try to get other counties involved. But for here, we don't have any problem.
And remind me, this may have been an email, the testing that occurred of the panel materials, was that done as a requirement for intake, or was that done proactively?
I think that's done as a requirement.
As a special waste. So what triggers that? Is the volume of the sole source material?
It's the type of waste, I believe.
Okay.
Anything that would not be considered municipal will be required to go through a special waste approval.
Okay.
Even things like the diced tomatoes.
Yep.
Out-of-date diced tomatoes had to get special approval, so they weren't considered municipal waste.
Well, I mean, it's, I understand the principle.
All right.
As silly as it seems, if you have a high concentration of isoprene gases, which are carcinogen, people will get very excited about that, but isoprene is what oak trees give off. And it produces the blue haze, which is what we call the blue ridge. So, it's about concentration. The ability to contaminate, so.
Yeah. Can you say that again? That was an interesting fact.
Yeah, I want to make sure I heard what he said. I don't know, really.
As I understand it, when oak trees are under duress of heat, they produce isoprene, which limits their excess vaporization of water. So they're not sweating too much and losing water. And isoprene, when viewed through ambient light, refracts blue out of the air, out of sunlight, which is why isoprene gas over the mountains creates some blue haze, which is what I call the blue ridge, and they're less blue in the winter.
So that's why.
Fun fact for everyone.
But
Yeah, I mean, it's something.
But if you had a can of isoprene gas, it would have to be labeled as toxic and as a known carcinogen. So it's about how prevalent and consolidated.
And that's why we get things to roll.
And you wonder why you're stuck in that seat right there.
That's good information. I mean, all my family on both sides come from the Blue Ridge Mountains. And that's why we call our mountains the Blue Ridge Mountains.
So that's
You
what-
biology got it.
That is
Really?
correct. What he says, that's all right.
That's what a lot of people tell me that.
Just realize.
Yeah,
Richmond
I mean,
right now
one of my
is
families
digging up
killed 6
sidewalks.
people in a courthouse.
You know that. Richmond's digging up their sidewalks and putting down green space now.
Really?
Okay, they pay to put down sidewalks, and who paid for it? And now they're paying down to put down green space, and who's
But
paying?
they're not paying for it.
Who is?
The city of
But
Richmond.
again, that's not here, but I'm just saying, that's why, like Benji said, that's why you wanna look at this stuff every 20 years or so.
And thank you for bringing that to our attention. Royce, I was dumping some used motor oil in the new facility. This appears to be working very well. And Royce had brought that proactively to my attention, so appreciate that.
It's gonna likely be continue coming up from this group, just
Yeah.
from what I've seen from them. It's gonna continue to come up, and they're gonna every so often bring it back to our attention.
Yeah.
But as long as the companies go through the right channels and they catch, I mean, the toxic leaching profile they do is pretty solid. It's recommended by the DEQ. They wash a solid acid over these parts of ground up powder.
They try to make it.
They try to make it replicate its time it would spend in a landfill to see if it does leach at all.
All right, do you know what the material was thrown away? Was it whole panels? Was it broken up
It
panels?
was damaged new solar panels.
damaged new solar panels,
Yes.
so they threw the whole panel away where it would be obvious that's what they were throwing away. All right, my question for you is, y'all haven't taken any panels, have you? But
Yes, actually, we had.
you had, when was that?
Last time was 5th of June. We took
5th of
it.
June this year?
Yes.
All right, how much was it? And was it from the same place that those came from?
Do not have that information.
You don't have that information, can you get that information?
We can't give customers information out.
If you can't give customers information out, you can discuss certain solid waste streams, though, that would be subject to EPA or DEQ testing on that point. Is that not correct?
Possibly. I can check on that.
Yeah, I don't know that it's, that, I don't think we're getting out our customer information here as much as
Mhm.
content information. Is that correct?
Well,
What did
no,
you say it was
I mean, I was
$110?
made aware of this situation here,
The
and I
approval
was
was
like,
for
I don't think they've
$110,000
taken anything at the landfill
I
here
got
that
you.
I'm aware of. It would be kind of obvious to see it. I don't, unless they were doing something
110
sneaky.
tons ain't
I
gonna come in one.
don't see them
but the
doing
approval
it. So my
for
question
the
was,
That-
to reassure myself they hadn't, well, now I'm finding out.
That
they
I
had. So
misunderstood, okay.
I'm interested to see how much of it was. So we do have to keep our eyes on it. I didn't want to go, hey, we're not getting solar panels. We don't need to worry about this.
Well, I mean, I'm speaking for myself alone, but if a solar, that's why I asked the question about the technical trigger for doing testing. So when something like that occurs, there is a mechanism in place that does test for the toxicity or potential danger of that material. So there's, we can watchdog it all we want, but it's like being watchdog, I guess is what I'm saying. And there's nothing wrong with, with open communication on that front. It seems to me like the things are in place that are watching that and controlling that. In fact, it's occurred. And that's being brought to our
And
attention.
I checked up on it just to make sure, because it's brought to my attention and confirmed with the Virginia DEQ that everything was good. And they confirmed that the limits that are being applied are the correct limits.
All right, so, it came into question, the issue was where the solar panels were made. If they were made in a certain area, there was a higher level, or that's where the problem was. If they were made somewhere else, it's not the case. And that was my question about where they came from. And I'm sorry I didn't clarify on that, not necessarily who it was, or just more where were the panels made?
The variety of panels were, so I've been told, and the information I've been provided were made by a US company. And so the US company is required to follow more stringent laws than if we were to just, the company that was disposing, if they were to just import it.
Right,
So the panels that were disposed of here were the new variety thin film panels made by a US company.
that's what I was after.
Yes.
Okay,
And also the testing is, it doesn't care where they were made, because they're gonna get, if I'm correct, ground up, acid
Yes.
washed. And so if anybody's trying to hide anything in them, that testing is gonna make it come out.
The analytical test.
no, and I understand all that, the testing and how that works. I just want to know what was brought to the landfill that's right up the street that we're trying to advise on. You know what I'm saying? Is this something that is like, whoa, wait a minute, we really need to, and I understand we need to pay attention to it. I want to be on the same page with what took place here.
The description was damaged solar panels during installation. So the solar panels that were new and they were just damaged while they were being put in, so they were disposed of here.
I don't know it turned out to be safe, but I appreciate other people looking out for us.
Yeah.
Send us the information.
Oh,
So that brings up another question for me. They were damaged being installed here locally.
In Meharon, down near the Meharon River.
All right, so it is the locality that information we were passed along. It's the
Yes.
same, okay. All right. Do you know how much was done?
It was 110 tons was the approval.
Yeah.
And that had to go through. So it was approved the amount that was sent here?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
That's how
And
much.
and with all due respect to the folks that sent the information, that is a him issue for them. And this is an us issue for us that has been addressed, given the legal protocols and filters that are in place. Yes.
Before they can be disposed of, they go through testing before they're approved.
Yeah.
So the testing comes in, and then if the testing is good, then they're approved.
All right. Just want to be confident what we're doing is on above board, that's all.
Appreciate that.
all right, while we're on solar panels, because it goes right into what you're talking about. the solar field behind my house is gonna be done. Let you know, I'm not an official person, but it's gonna be done. Everybody thought it was a stop.
Was it US made panels or?
I have no idea, and that's what I'm getting into, is when they start that, it'll be more of them, of panels brought to the landfill, but they're gonna damage them too. I'm just, it's something we need to look at for.
Well, and I agree with that, but, and I appreciate the information. But, we are limited in our scope here to basically what crosses that scale. And is it acceptable or not, according to the documents that both parties have signed? And if it checks the box legally, then it goes in the land. So,
I just want to, just bring it up, that will be, because a lot of people around have talked to me just because I live over there. They said, well, I guess ain't gonna be no solar. No, it's gonna, they're coming.
Did y'all receive any panels for the construction of the other solar farms here in Amelia? You don't, okay, I don't know.
if you want to discuss the alternative, if solar debris, solar panel debris, or any other waste for that sake, was declared to be a hazardous material, then it would not come into our landfill.
Nothing comes in there without being pre-approved.
No, I'm just trying to stay on top of what's going on, that's all. And I understand that, and I'm not trying to say, hey, they're not allowed here. It was brought to my attention, there was an issue somewhere or another, and I want to make sure we're not going down that road.
Right, and I only want to say that not to you, but for anybody that's not clear.
Right.
That hazardous material don't cross the scale and don't get into the landfill.
The landfill that had the issue there that this was brought up from, is that like a county-owned landfill, or is it run like Waste Management, a national company, a large company?
So what triggered this wasn't a landfill. What triggered this was what would be called a watchdog group.
Okay,
There's solar farms being put in down towards the southern part of Virginia.
mm-hmm,
That specific group is not happy with it.
mm-hmm,
So they sent us a document basically just saying, here's all the terrible reasons solar panels shouldn't be put in, and they're going in your landfill.
right, all right, and
So that was the trigger for us to look into.
all right, the landfill that they're going into, is that a private landfill?
The landfill they went into is the one here.
Is our landfill.
It's just landfill.
So they didn't dump any solar panels in their landfill down there?
They didn't tell us that.
Okay, that's what I was curious about.
Yeah, they
All
didn't
right.
tell us that.
That's
If it was
that's the their
deemed
fault too.
too hazardous to
No, I
use
understand
landfill,
that, I'm just trying to,
There's hazardous waste landfills in Alabama that take solar panels.
Okay,
So
that's what I was
any-
wondering, if it was too hazardous to go here, where do they go then?
They go
Alabama.
down south to Alabama and Georgia have special landfills to take that stuff.
Special landfills.
Yes.
All right.
I mean, just like a radiated nuclear, they're,
Yeah,
you segregate that. by
yeah, you don't think about it, it's a solar panel, you just don't think about it being that hazardous, it's really.
All right, is there any other new business? No new business. All right, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Can I mention one thing? For some reason, give you credit, the last 2 months, the landfill has not stunk like it was. I don't know whether y'all did anything different or whether it's the weather. Now, I do know when it's down, and we sure ain't had it down, but it's that part, the buzzers. It's like they went away. Now I'm sure they're on the landfill.
Made a burst of flames.
Some of them may have, not me, but some of them could have acquired lead. Oh, not me, but, and I'm saying, but for some reason, they're not hanging around. They used to sew with Ms. Webb's on the sheds and stuff, and I don't see them. So that's two good things. Maybe y'all didn't do nothing, but it looks like you did.
Instead of listening to the alarm, just go.
That's just the bylaws for film all night.
Whatever, as far as positions. Because if we don't do it now, it puts us down another 2 months. Or another 2 meetings.
Well, that's correct. So Bench raises the point, going back to the very beginning of the meeting, that we have deferred elections. Then there was a comment about adjusting bylaws, which is fine, but a comment would need to be a motion in order to proceed on that. So we're still in the new business section, and that would be an appropriate point if anybody wanted to make this go towards that.
I think that's good wording, go for it.
Sorry?
You're good at wording, go for it.
God, everybody's looking at me.
He put you on a fire, he threw you on the bus.
No pressure.
What was,
I just, he said it can't take place and we've got 2 meetings.
we need
gotta
a, we
We
need,
gotta
a-
get the wheels moving.
and we need a legal opinion on it, right?
No.
No,
It's all written out.
Proposed changes to bylaws are handled within this body. If we require or ask for legal opinion, I mean, we have the option of doing that. I don't know that this would necessarily trigger that, but there hasn't been any question to comment on, so.
The what?
Healthy, it's a healthy thing.
Way to word this thing.
Well, they did just do
What's a good way to make it in the form of a motion that you
I'm gonna get him to help.
good? That's what we like to do. We put it, that's why he is where he's at.
First of all, before we go that route, are you okay with that?
Well, I mean, to be honest, the provision where it says, until the successor shall be elected, is a kick the can down the road clause.
Yeah.
Which means that we could have an election at the next meeting. But the result would have to be the same as this meeting. So we're supposed to do it today. But if we don't do it today, for whatever reason, we defer. If we defer, which I don't like, because we're not really living by the rules, then we either need to change the rules, or somebody needs to step up as chair. I prefer this the latter.
I
it.
know.
And I'm not trying to argue with you. We are going by the rules. If we defer it,
Yeah,
we are going by the rules.
sure, it's like a continuing resolution.
That's the way to play legal.
I'm gonna have to say that I don't wanna change the rules for us and just to make it right. If any rule change were made, it should be for later on boards down the road, if you follow what I'm saying. It's kind of like giving ourselves well, we can't give ourselves a pay raise, but Congress and Senate giving themselves a pay raise and giving themselves.
Yeah.
So I understand that where we're at. But I don't think it's a good idea and not a good idea in the sight of John Public that we change rules to fit what we want while we're sitting here.
I agree.
And personally, I've always been in favor of term limits and I remain so.
Yeah, I agree.
So, I mean,
Well, Ben,
for lack of a motion, the conversation will dwindle. If anybody wants to think about it until the next regular meeting and run for it, I'd be happy to, you can call me, email us. That's fine, but does your bylaws changes have a bad taste in my mouth?
I agree with that. I think what would probably been a little, said a little bit better if we knew about this. I didn't know about this.
Yeah, and
I think if it was on here, didn't realize that either. Yeah. I'm gonna suggest, like you said, let's pray on it, whatever, and push it down to the next meeting.
Well, I knew we had the elections and I was kind of hoping that he had only been one time and I didn't remember from last year. So I was hoping it kind of would stay the same. So.
well, I have full faith and confidence in any of the committee members here would do just as good a job, if not better than I have. Now, I would happily second a nomination for any committee. Here.
Well, somebody's gonna,
not talking anybody into it,
somebody's gonna have to.
I've joined Benji in prayer over here, okay? That's where I'm at. I've joined Benji in prayer.
Well, if there is not a nomination on the table, then we put this in that meeting. Is everybody comfortable with that? I'm not, but by consensus, I think I have to be. All right, well, I think that'll tidy up new business unless there is any other new business. I would appreciate and welcome you to the committee voice. Thank you, Ben. It's been a productive session, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, all in favor, signify by raising hands, all opposed, like sign. Thanks, everybody.
Ben, don't leave.
I gotta go.
Don't leave.
I gotta go.